Hello YouTube, back in the next Yu-Gi-Oh! Review, and today I have the Structure Deck Spellcaster's Command, or Spellcaster's Command Structure Deck, I think they started rearranging the names around. But either way, this is the modified, this is kind of the updated version of the Structure Deck Spellcaster's Judgment, which this is also based around spell counters. Got a lot of cards in here that are nice, some new cards, Spell Power Grasp with one of the new cards included here. Doesn't do a whole lot, gives a spell counter, then adds another copy. Can be pretty useful when you have 3 copies in your hand, and of course it'll rack up spell counters not just for its own effect, but for other effects that activate involving spell cards. And they have a lot of cards in here. Of course, I've included cards like Flambeau Magician. Obviously it's a spellcaster and it's a tuner. It's searchable. And of course, as you probably noticed, I've got 3 copies of Tempest Magician here because they're obviously they get spell counters when you ditch cards from your hand, so you can drop a lot. And if you can easily win with these cards, I would think. Not just because of their attack points, but of course they also deal damage. Let's see, I think it's 500. Yeah, 500 per spell counter you actually remove from it. I think it's only from itself. Oh, actually no, it does just. It's not just for itself, but all counters. So if you've racked up a lot of counters, and you probably will with the spell counter based deck, you're going to probably deal a lot of damage. I think that's why it was so hard to get originally. It's got some nice reprints in here. Some cards were definitely worthwhile. Here's another reprint, another card I've included here. It's another tuner monster. Obviously for synchro summoning. Works pretty well with bringing out Tempest Magician. And of course to bring it back when I need it. Limit Reverse. Works with it. Works with a couple cards in this deck. It's not included in this deck, I don't think. And of course, one of the other new cards you get here is a new field spell that directly implies working with spell counters, because it'll gain one for itself, and you can protect itself by removing a spell counter. And it also works well if you need to remove a spell counter from a card to do something with it, like Breaker. You'll take it off. You can take it off itself or anywhere else. Now, that can be really useful for lots of different spell counter related effects. As you saw, I had Crystal Seer here, which is a pretty decent reprint. I didn't think it was that good to begin with. It was an ultra rare to start with, but it got reprinted here as a common. And the main boss monster they included here is Endymion, the Master Magician, right here. Not a bad card. Its effect isn't that great, at least when you want to special summon it. You can rack up 6 spell counters, but honestly, I don't think I've ever done it all that well. It's not all that strong. Of course, you do get a spell counter, when you actually use the effect, but it costs you spell cards to actually destroy cards on the field, so it's not particularly that good. But it's got some reprints, some of the same cards that featured in the other structure deck, Pitch Black Power Stone, Magical Dimension, things you'd probably expect in a Spellcaster-based deck. Of course, some cards in here are just not really worth it. Make-Q, Master of the Barriers is in here, Barriers is in here, Twister's in here. Twister's like a poor man's version of Mystical Space Typhoon, which I don't think they actually include in here. No, I don't think I see it in here. Figures, they include the janky version, but don't include the card that actually is much better. Like, on all accounts, it is much better. Mystical Space Typhoon gets rid of face-up cards or face-down cards. I think Twister is restricted to face-down cards and costs 500 life points. Nope, it's only face-up. Either way, doesn't matter. Mystical Space Typhoon is the better card. It's also a quick play spell as well. Twister's being a quick play spell doesn't help it because it's already been outclassed. If it were the only card we had out, it wouldn't be that bad, but Mystical Space Typhoon has been well before. It was Magic Ruler, I think, when it first came out, which became Spell Ruler later. And it's got a decent reprint of Mage Power in here. You got Dark Red Enchanter, which was a secret in one of the other sets. And, of course, you got the reprint of Magicians Unite, which was a Champion Pack card. That was an ultra rare, and those were harder to get than your typical ultra rare in a pack, or maybe it was about the same. I don't remember exactly, but I think they were a little harder to get than your typical ultra rare card back then. And certainly compared to now, in ultra rares, you can pretty much get you're almost guaranteed an ultra rare just by opening a pack. 'Cause you get a foil card and a rare, which is awesome. And in current packs, I haven't bought a current pack in a long time, but I'm pretty sure they all follow the same pattern now. Because I think if they were changing it again, they would have updated. They would have said so. I would have found out by now. But it's a pretty decent deck. I mean, obviously, you can probably mix and match. Probably got a decent deck out of it as well. Although, I think arguably some of the cards in the Spellcaster Judgment Structure deck are a little outdated. This one may be outdated as well. So, I mean, I think these are generally based on the era they were released. So, of course, they're going to be outdated after a fashion. But I think they've continued to release cards that involve spell counters. In fact, I think there's a skilled blue magician might work out. You might build a dark magician based deck, although the dark magician is not in here at all. These are all spellcasters, so you're probably going to have a hard time putting in new cards unless they're related to spell counters, because I think that's probably the most obvious choice. You could always throw in some extra synchros, or Xyz monsters as well, because I know there are some out there. Xyz, there's Pendulum, there's all sorts of stuff you can go on now. And then Link monsters are already out. I don't know if there are too many Spellcaster Link monsters yet. Maybe one or two, but I'm pretty sure there aren't very many. They're mostly like warriors and stuff like that. But it's not a bad deck, especially if you can update it and maintain it. It's getting a little bit easier now that Konami's decided to scrap their usual 3-month cycle regarding the ban list. Or even, I think they had a 1-month cycle at one point, where it'd be every month they would change the list. But now it's like whenever they jolly well feel like it. I mean, Japan gets them more often than we do now. But yeah, that's my review on the Spellcaster's Command Structure deck. Thanks for watching.